Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be talking about homeschool requirements to homeschool in the state of Missouri. All right, so homeschooling in Missouri is actually pretty easy and very low-key. There are not a ton of requirements, but there are a few, so let's go over them. First off, a good resource to find any of this information would be HSLDA. Their website will have all the information you need, and this actually applies for any state. So no matter what state you're homeschooling in, check this website out. They will have all the information you need. I will link them down below. So for Missouri, homeschooling age is between the ages of 7 and 17. You obviously can begin homeschooling before the age of 7, and you can keep schooling past the age of 17 if you wanted to, but they must be considered doing school by the age of 7. So what is doing school? There is a pretty loose idea of what that is here. Basically, the state says they want you to have logged 1,000 hours of school. 600 of those hours must be core subjects. The other 400 can be electives, and I will go over what's core or elective. But 1,000 hours is what the state wants you to do. A homeschool year begins July 1st, and you have until July 1st of the next year to complete your 1,000 hours. And that's actually why I'm doing the video now, because July 1st is right upon us. So if you were thinking about homeschooling, you're gonna wanna start logging hours next month, starting on July 1st. All right, let's go over, kind of break down what the hours are. So of the 1,000 hours, you need 600 core. All right, so the 600 core hours need to be reading, math, social studies, language arts, and science. Those make up your core hours. So anything that falls into those categories, you can count towards core hours. The other 400 are electives. So this can be music, PE, history, any kind of extra study you're doing that wouldn't fall into those core hours. Bible can be an elective. There's a lot. Pretty much anything you study can fall into the electives if it doesn't fall into the core. Now, how do you log those? This is a big debate among Missouri homeschoolers. Everyone has a different idea of how you should or shouldn't do it, but here's the deal. Unless for some reason you come under investigation by the state, you are not actually going to have to show these to anybody. There's no requirement to report to anyone. There's no requirement to show anything to anyone. You are simply keeping these just in case something happens and you need to prove something. And this does not happen often, but it does happen. So I mean, I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying I don't know that there's really one way that has to be done, because most of us are probably not going to have to even show anybody this. But in the off chance that something arises that you do need to prove that you're homeschooling, you will want these. How I do it is I get a date book. And at the beginning of the school year on July 1st, I start keeping almost like an attendance. So I list out all 4 of my children's age, and then I will check mark that they did school on that day throughout the date book. At the beginning of the date book, I actually will set out like a sample schedule that this is the school that we are doing. And then each day after that, I just check mark that that child was present. And that way we're assuming that we did the sample schedule that I had at the beginning. If I change my schedule, then I will put a new sample schedule when we are starting that new schedule. And then again, I just, from that point on, will just check mark that that child is present. And if I check mark they're present, I'm assuming that we will all understand that they did this sample schedule. Kind of like the way I'm thinking of it is when you go to school, they have their lesson plan, but then they also have an attendance sheet, and the attendance sheet is how they know if the child did the stuff or not, or was present for the stuff that they did or not. They don't actually have a lesson plan for every single child in class. And since my children all are under me, I know their work is slightly different, but we all are doing math at this time. We are all doing English at this time, or for about that amount of time. So that is how I keep a log to show if I were need to show the amount of school we did. Now in a separate book, I will keep my actual lesson plans. So like we are actually reading these pages, we are actually doing this math page. And let me go into that a little further. Sorry, a truck drove by. All right, so at the beginning of each book, there is actually a lesson plan, and a lot of textbooks will have this. So I use master books, and at the beginning is a lesson plan. And that is what I use as my lesson plans for each child. I do not separately write out, we are doing page this and this, because the book already has it. And then it even has a place where you can write the date and check off that they did it. They have a place where you can record their grades. So I just use what is in each textbook as their lesson plan. Then if it's something that I'm not using any of that for, I record in a different planner that I have that I record what I'm doing. So I have 2 planners and then the textbooks with the lesson plans. The one planner keeps the hours, the textbooks have lesson plans, and then any lesson plans that are not in a textbook go in the other assignment book. This way, I kind of have all my bases covered, and if you were to need to show something, I believe, unless things get really investigated, all you have to do is show the hour log. You don't necessarily need to show what you're doing in those hours unless an investigation goes even further. By the way, this is not legal advice. I am not a lawyer. I don't know legal stuff. This is just what I do to cover my bases, and be sure to check out that website. They are a legal firm and can answer any actual legal questions. All right, so now, how long should you keep stuff? I have probably quite a few years worth of assignment books in my library, but the legal recommendation is 2 years, unless you are just starting out, and then obviously you aren't going to have 2 years to keep. But if you have been doing it for a while, they recommend that you hold on to at least 2 years worth of schooling, unless they are in middle school or high school, and then you should probably just hold on to all of it. I do not have anyone that's hit middle school or high school yet, so I have not had to really look into that too much, but they say 2 years. All right, so the last thing I think is just there is no notifications required, and there's no teacher certificate required. I do believe though, if your children are already attending a public school, you do probably need to send them a letter informing them that you are going to be keeping them home, just so the school's not like expecting for them to show up. But that is something I have not had to do. My children have never actually been in the public school system. So if that is the situation you're in, I would recommend checking out the site below and maybe contacting someone to make sure you're doing the right thing, because I do not honestly know exactly what you do in that instance. But the site says no notification is required. But for someone like me, I do not have to call a public school and tell them we're not coming, because we've never been. They're not expecting my kids to come, and no one cares. So that's who it is with me. But if you already are enrolled in public school, it is a little different for you. So check that out. All right, so I think that is everything. I hope that made sense. All of this sounds really complicated, but once you get going, it really isn't that hard. It's basically just doing what you do every day and just making sure you check mark on the day that you did it. I wouldn't worry too much about it or let it stress you out too much. I know some people get really uptight about writing down every little thing they did, but as you homeschool, you will realize you learn constantly throughout the day. All right, last thing I want to talk about is start logging in July. So I recommend start logging your hours July 1st, even if you are not actually starting school until like September, because you are doing school in July. If you stop and think about it, you can go ahead and start logging maybe PE hours or field trip hours, things like that. Think about what you're going to be doing in July. Are you going to the zoo? Are you going swimming? Are you doing things like that? And you can go ahead and start getting a lot of your elective hours in before you even start your school year. And this will really help when you get towards the end of the school year, not feel crunched to get hours in if you go ahead and start on the 1st of July. And I'm not saying lie about your hours. Just look at what you're going to do in the month of July and August and be like, can any of this go towards school hours? Are they going to be reading some books? You can add that to reading. There's quite a bit you actually are probably doing on a day-to-day that you can go ahead and start logging right away. So, and that's where my sample schedule comes in. I usually do a summer schedule, so I know they're going to be reading or doing this PE type activity like baseball. And that goes into my summer schedule, and so I will check that they did that. And in the summer, I'm a little more, like I don't check every day because I know we don't do all that every day. So it's a little easier for me to be like, we went to the pool today, and so I check that we did PE on July 5th. And just, I keep that. And then at the end of the month, I tally up my hours, and then I know where I'm kind of starting for when we start in August. But yes, go ahead and get started. Don't let time get away from you. That's time that you could be using to your advantage. So I hope you guys found this informative and helpful. Please feel free to ask any questions down below, and I will be happy to answer them to the best of my ability. And I will see you all in my next video. Bye.